All right. So welcome everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the 13th installment of the I Think I Can't Speak for Everyone Here reading series. This is a reading series for writers, people who have written, are writing, or who I think should be writing. Though poetry is my way of taunting the vandalism of being born into an unmarked body, this is a writer's space. So vignettes, silences, singing, poems, excerpts from novels, all those things are welcome. Anything from the part of you that writes down the world, it's your space. Whether reading or not, you can turn your camera on or off. Please keep your audio off while readers are reading. If there's anything that I need to know that I'm not seeing, you can drop it in the chat. You can direct message me on the chat if you want to sign up for the open mic as well. Just put your name and any pronunciation notes in there, and I'll get you on the open mic after the featured readers read. Afterward, if you have any questions, you can direct them to bluejawedsnake@gmail.com, which I dropped in the chat as well. Readings will be on the YouTube channel within a couple hours of the reading. With that, I'll go ahead and introduce our first featured reader. I usually go alphabetical by first name, and I don't know if I told the readers this. So Clara Burghelea will be reading first. Clara Burghelea published 2 poetry collections, The Flavor of the Other from Dos Madres Press 2020 and Praise the Unburied from Chaffinch Press 2021. Her poems and translations have been published in Goalf Coast, Delos, the Los Angeles Review, and elsewhere. She is the review editor of Ezra, an online journal of translation, and a third-year PhD student in literature at the University of Texas at Dallas. I came to Clara's work via an online journal I used to curate called Eyes Acoustic, and then through her collection Flavor of the Other, which I absolutely loved. What I love about Clara's work is something I wrote in a reflection, I think, of that work. Way they use taste as a portal through which one can swap hungers and makes of self and otherness versed in the familiarities of becoming, not saddled with being. With that, I'm super excited for Clara to read, and I'll go ahead and give them the spotlight.
Thank you so much for the kind words, and obviously thank you for the invitation. I'm so happy to be here sharing space with Kristyn and you and our guests. It's been a while since I've taken part in a reading on Zoom that sort of like brings back memories from the lockdown period. These days, the only platform I use is Teams with students who usually are about to get in trouble. So like there is nothing fun about it. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. And I will be reading today some poems from my upcoming collection, which is going to be a hybrid collection, where I'm sort of like having in conversation, like, sorry if the light is too strong behind me. So having in conversation traditional form, and then writing that does not follow any Western verse norms, so to speak. And I mean here the Juihitsu, Haibun's prose poems. There is a lot of code switching, more than in my 2 previous collections. And there is this idea of fragmented reading that is, to a certain extent expressing my identity. As you said, I'm a third-year PhD student in Dallas, Texas, but I spent my life, or let me rephrase, I've spent a great deal of my adult life in between geographies and spaces, because I'm that kind of mother who, much as she loves and adores her children, gets restless and has to pursue this, sort of like not easily understandable passions, such as translation and writing. So this is kind of like an intro to the poems that I'm going to read. They are thematically about absence and motherhood, and how I negotiate roles, like how I find time to do assignments with my son on WhatsApp, because he's entering high school this year, but this is how I spent last year. So it's absence, motherhood, the body, loss, and basically the in-between spaces. I consider myself to be a hybrid because English is my second language. For some reason, I can only produce work in English and not in my Romanian mother tongue. However, my poems have like this feature of code switching. And since I also speak French, sometimes I like not to sound important or anything. They happen naturally without control. So that was to sort of like prepare you for what you're going to hear. So the working title for the collection is Nebulas of Desire. And the first poem that opens is written in couplets, and it's called How to Write a Lost Poem. And before I start reading, am I good with the sound? Okay, thank you. Obviously, you know, other than hearing my poem, you get this amazing perk of hearing my nasal voice. I use this to sort of like, you know, when students stumble upon my name, I'm like, don't worry about the name. It's unimportant. You'll remember me for my thick accent and definitely for my nasal voice. So, how to write a lost poem. Begin with the half-decomposed remains of a hard night, then the vast ineptitude of coming to terms with absence. Begin next with the throbbing dawn, the way the sun fattens with every bird cry, every gush of wind, then the aching light. Always begin from the body, its soft unfolding under warm sheets, words for wanting to stain the sheer air. Then begin. Begin with the marrow of memory, splitting the heavy silence, ebb and flowing longing and lament, the knowledge of you being somewhere else, your fingers, wishbones, in someone else's origami heart, a supermoon of blooming flowers in her mouth. Still begin by ending, then end this beginning once bursting with promise, your lips scuttling across my forehead. That was the first poem, so it was for my daughter. On the verge of beginning her freshman college year. The next one is the Juihitsu, and I'm pretty sure that Barton and Kristyn know, and I'm not familiar with the rest of the people being part in our reading, so maybe I should say a few words about what the Juihitsu is. It's a Japanese form that goes all the way to 102 AD. It was it appears as being first documented by a court lady who took pleasure in writing down not only personal musings, but also anecdotes and anything that her ear caught or her eye caught as being important on her job and outside. So Juihitsu means running the brush, and it's asking the audience to, you know, follow the imaginary trace of the brush, but there are these hiccups that happen along the way, and then this give to me, this form is extremely important to me because it gives room for exploration. And as I said, it sort of like mirrors the way that things happen to me in terms of writing process, but also it's a lot about who I am, right? I am as a poet a multitude of these beats that somehow try to blend in together. And as I said, it's called the Nebulas of Desire. A crescent moon limns each linden tree with white gold. Inside the dormant room, a fistful of worries nested on the couch, testing like pine needles, syrupy yet choking. To soften the gaze, I slip out of skin. We plunge into a tunnel. Later, I feed my other thirst. Tonight's special Juihitsu, and yes, crumbles are a thing. I let them pepper the page, curl up the nib of the pen. Meanwhile, a spider is feeding on my left shoulder. I only discovered it later, busy wrestling white space. After my mother's death, I wear black for 6 months during the day outside the house. My kids do not seem to notice. At night, naked is the skin that feels less of a fraud, imposter, pretender. Each day, dappled horses galloping along my veins, the radiant, pregnant libido, my breast present beneath my shirt, a dream of pouring my face into everything that fits the heart, later quenches the body. As a girl, I never dreamed of motherhood. My dolls never played house. Instead, they were endlessly getting ready for a party. I'm mothering with joy, says one of my friends. She has perfectly polished nails, impeccable clothes, and two picture-perfect kids. I want to know how joy inhabits a skin. Joy as in triumph, jubilation, exaltation. As a toddler, my daughter asked for trains with faces and dinosaurs. When she was gifted her first Barbie, the hair vanished in a second. It looks more like a mom now, she explained. Thomas the Tank Engine was a solid block coming out safe and sound out of her trials. Almost both Barbie and Thomas often ran into one another in the toy box. He obviously gave her rides to parties. Is this joy or lack of hereditary promise? Things inherited: brown eyes, a sweet tooth, a positive blood type, the green thumb, biliary dyskinesia, insomnia, the bunny line, temper, a temper, the temper, ravenous, anjolicu, ți-l rup dacă mă faci de rușine, language of smoke, Tanki's son, pink magnolia in blooms. Did it scent ravish the Brachiosaurus? Were its leaves a joy to chew on? A pile of speckled dinosaurs tower at the root of the tree, my daughter's brown head moving above, whispering. Tentacles of love, radiant embrace, ledges and wounds. Only 3 more breaths of baby Dom, one for each mammal, and once cradled in the crook of my left arm. The puppy too. What's your favorite lie? So that was the Juihitsu, dealing with motherhood and negotiating the coming of a second child, and the things we're supposed to mean even to our children in terms of motherhood, and how we really feel inside ourselves. The next poem is called Drag de Mama. It has got a Romanian name, and it's actually a pun-upon word. It means loving mom, but also I love my mom. So my loving mom or love my mom, that would be the rough translation. It is a poem that I wrote on the occasion of, well, let me rephrase, that was not occasion, in the unfortunate event of losing my mother to cancer. So, Drag de Mama. Outside the open window, my grandmother pruning the carrot top roses. A blanket of petals at her feet, their scent heavy with loss. My eyes searching for patches of sunny grass among the tall flowers. For days, my mother lay in bed and shrank into herself. Each morning, I sat in the burgundy chair, ill with waiting. The soothing snipping of the scissors, my head on her belly, the way I sought comfort as a child in pain or confusion. I craved to unstitch the lush May, rest her tiny frame, soft and pulpy, amid bird call and cricket song, the hungry rush of hyacinths, ease the weight cradled behind her ribs. Everything in a gentle way, my body unfree from the fear of not being alert, not paying enough attention, missing out on whatever slipped from her mouth-shaped bruise, her sunken face. I wanted to love and forget the way a wound loves its feeding tissue while also growing crust to heal. In the bursting garden, my grandmother resting her hands folded in her lap, yearning to hold the air. Okay, promise that not all of them are sad, so. So the next one is about absence and the body and miscarriage. Everyday absences. It's again, sorry, it's called Everyday Absences, and it's another Juihitsu. The misread body, tinkering between revise and rehash, a pair of big jungle cats in the same cage. The patterning and ritual of loss, comb hair 10 times before the tall IKEA mirror, scrub face with circular movements before sunscreen, stumble upon a bread mint box filled with milk teeth, sharing space with a nail clipper, upper drawer, bathroom cabinet, name knowing from within. This Juihitsu cannot go without a feathering, a home, bristle the brush, let pigment impregnate the skin of the poem. Like a screaming nest of word cells, soft, drowsy, yet a perfect eye spot on its tail, a smattering of color, at times even a gossamer letter to the ear of a deaf god. Intimacy as a product of distance and estrangement. At language level, slurping words in Romanian, macerating their roots and tendrils before regurgitating into an English open palm, choking on residue, revise and rehash. The temperatures of dreams as they simmer behind bustling temples. My hands smelling of lovage, LOVE and AGE. The patience it takes to learn how to make a soothing soup, how to live without salt and be salty. A dazzling speck of unrest. Kida, the American Akita, and her zoomies outside the window. Every now and then a gust to the benches of the cherry tree, sending Akita glitter my way. When she takes a break, she crashes into the grass, and her shaved, scarred belly stings my eye. A storm of questions melding under the right tongue. Was it my right? We learn everything through the open window, the faint sound of the falling magnolia petals, the cry of the lost owlet, the full-throated song of the velvet sky. Mostly we hold the power to call night into being. You ask for a clear uterus. I comply, half content, half yearning for a change of heart, of chances, of you. Inside this house of cards, the blinds bang the wall, the bed dreams of plaid. Any nerve in the palm you rest on my stomach could be a tree, avid with barren fruit, hiccuped flowers, inciting speculation, except for the nails aching to thrust into every inch of skin. 10 mason jars on the windowsill, halved apricots sprawled in honey, unfurling their sheen. 1 spoonful is God's finger brushing the roof of the mouth. Goosebumps. Another, and then there you have God's bread on the back of the neck. You hand me a glass of lemon water, the fatigue sweetness of yet another July day. Nouns that dress this summer. Salată de vinete, plimbări cu chida, halbă de bere, caniculă, ciorbă de fasole, dermatită periorală, cură de pepene roșu, caietul de rețete al mamei, prăjitură cu vișine. Feels like folding a sheet of paper in pleats, 2 times, to cool the faces of the neighbor's twins. On the boy's forehead, a birthmark shaped as a holder. I sit between them on the curb, little hands diving for cherries into a big bowl. The girl rests her head on my shoulder. Intoxication is also baby sweat, to hold against the roof of the mouth. The womb hums back. Its voice thickens to shriek. It begs to be soothed. And I remember I left my tongue in the butcher's den, numb from my own howling. The Akita muzzle pushes the memory back into the skin pocket. Inside this fraying house, Kida and I, licking amber leaf. That's the end of the Juihitsu. And Barton, please let me know how I'm doing on time. Okay, thank you. The next poem is a haibun. I'm very much drawn to this form because, well, I guess it sort of like brings together 2 of my other forms, which is the prose poem and the haiku. And I like how the first block of writing the prose poem, and this is just one way of writing it. Nowadays, haibuns can come up as you guys know, an accumulation of prose poem or pieces of writing, and then you would have haikus inserted. This is rather into the classical way with a first a piece of writing, a prose poem, and then the haiku. And what I like about this form is that it feels to me very soothing, where I can actually, in the same way with the Juihitsu, I can visualize, but instead of having the interruptions of the brush that I see happening in the Juihitsu as a form, when it comes to the haibun, there is a smooth flow, and then you have almost something that resembles a turn, right? Like or a volta, the thing that we would use in the sonnet. So I see sometimes the haiku working to interrupt the smooth flow or like tracing of the brush on the page. So this one, I wrote from Delos thinking of home. So it's called When Missing Home. When missing home, think of how softly in the dusk jasmine tobaccos bare their star-like heads, fragrant whispers coating the alley. All white-bellied Samantha the cat, nonchalantly crossing the lawn before throwing onto the ground. An invitation. Think of this cul-de-sac alive with laughter and tantrum during the day, bending its asphalt tongue into muteness at nightfall. How summer breath feels on the moist skin, how heavy and feather light. Think of you stretching your legs on the steps, the Akita dozing off, occasionally lifting a cautious muzzle into the air, dreaming of squirrels. Think of him smoking, back against the yellow wall, slightly rounded shoulders, left hand in his pocket, always ready to share a joke. Think of you both together again, how the street shall melt into quiet, busy moon over the linden trees, all four houses breathing slower and slower, your son's tricycles yellow glistening like precious artifact in the grass, this world you can enter without knocking. The owlet's hungry cry, puncturing the night long, yet how love awaits. And that was the haiku at the end. In Delos, because I am a standard for PhD student living on a limited amount of money, I rent. So I have a room with a nice lady from Honduras, Sonia. And I think of her like as, you know, when I think of the poetics of neighboring, I think like how lucky I am to have the perfect neighbor. She speaks almost no English and I speak almost no Spanish. Somehow, you know, Romanian being from the same Spanish family, I can understand a number of words. And then there is this, you know, in-betweenness. I would say like, we place ourselves, you know, in between the three languages and manage to find a way to communicate. And I think that her food is amazing. And I think that food is like this amazing language of love and, you know, of communication. And I wrote a poem about her, about how it feels to break bread with a stranger. And again, this is a sonnet, just because in my collection, I'm interrogating the relationship between a traditional form and hybrid form, and how I'm looking at the way they feed on each other. You know, there is this, to my mind, interdependence, so on and so forth. So lots of the poems in the collections are written in form and sort of like, you know, sometimes shout or yell at the others. So this is a sonnet. Sonia mixes masa, harina, and salt, kneading the dough with all the force of her small frame. Next, she divides the wet mixture into balls. Mira, Clarita, aplana la masa. A spoonful of refried frijoles negros, a sprinkle of queso, a side of curtido. Who knew morcov și varză fac casă bună? Quick pickle of fellowship, glow at cheekbones, how food is the language of this house, no longer feeling alone in a way that is foreign. The smell of corn and melting cheese soothing lost appetite and homesickness. Clarita, pupusa siempre sabe mayor con vecinas. And all the riches of the world inhabit Sonia's plate. Together we stand, no longer just neighbor and other. I apologize for the mistranslation, for the mispronunciation. She makes this amazing pupusas, so I'm like, you know, I had to put them. I had like every one of my collections has food as the red thread, or like, you know, the guiding light. The next poem is again a piece of fragmented writing. This one does not qualify as Juihitsu because it is too short, but it is it's called Reality Hunger, and it's made up of 5 numbered entries. It is, at the same time, it's not a list poem, but I would say that it is the closest form-wise to a list poem. So it's called Reality Hunger. Number 1, at time facts weigh more than stones. Number 2, migration is a behavioral adaptation that helps animals survive. There is 9,515 kilometers, 5,913 miles between my hometown in Romania and Delos. A 13-hour flight, 2 segments, multiplied 3 times within a year. None counts as a seasonal impulse, rather a chasing of words and love. Sometimes, though, ink runs thicker than blood. Number 3. Mama, don't leave. You have infected me. There is hope this contamination will both heal and prevail. Door-laced cells my son and I share. Outside the open window, a hammering of woodpeckers, each thumb perforating my view. In Native American culture, the woodpecker drums in sync with Mother Earth's heartbeat. I guess all mothers ache the same. Number 4. Here you'll find it, you'll see where I drew my inspiration. Dear Maggie Nelson, your blues are intoxicating. How is it every time I turn blue with cold, I'm never blue? The needs of our body exceed the tapestry of our minds. Yes, blue has a heart and can easily die. Skies bleeding orange at the end of the day. The Hypomonia indica around my window dissolving into dark pink every summer evening. Despite its heady blue, it has been listed as a noxious weed. Number 5. The International Dark Sky Association ranks Texas as one of the best places in the United States to stargaze. The Delos skies are terrible in their beauty. I watch them from the window of my rented room, drunk on fading purples, pinks, and oranges. Every now and then, a plane furrows their bleeding. Across the world, a little boy is getting ready to welcome another day. So yeah, I love Maggie Nelson, so sort of like paying my respect to her work. So this one is a poem called What Moves Me, and it's written in couplets, and it's a working form, so I'm not sure it's gonna stay this way. What moves me? The way the day promises to implode with affections, blooming tulips outside the narrow window, the body ready to undo itself with kindness. A crooked 13-year-old smile behind my Huawei screen. Truth is, I left the other side of me in Vâlcea, learned to carry with me the Drăgoiești orchard, the storied steps in front of the cottage, the skin of the fingertips aching to touch the air silhouette of a mother. This poem, both willing to show and hide, a hunk of Delos clouds, a brushstroke of San Clarita, sings the voice of the mother in this house. Ven aquí los frijoles están listos. And I go and I spread the fried beans on a piece of bread and blame the green salsa for my moist eyes. Another revelation, I'm in love with frijoles. Yep. Well, you know, much of my restlessness is something that I love to like, you know, to pretend. I try to pretend that I'm smart, and I blame the duende. Although, funny thing, once I mentioned it, and the person I was trying to impress was like, "Oh, the little leprechaun that steals things from around the house." I'm like, "No, Lorca's duende." Anyway, so yeah. So this one is called Lorca's Long Shadow, and it contains a line from Tess Gallagher's "That Peculiar Open Air Tilling When You Speak to Painter," and it is. It's actually half a line. There are these 4 words that end the poem. So they are from borrowed from Tess Gallagher. Lorca's Long Shadow. I tattooed his words on my left wrist. The angels, the muses, the duende, hoping, actually begging for his breath to coat my poems, glaze them with a great death and longing. That unbroken dream made of lingering, also the furl of heartbeats when my son calls me mama. Later, he'll trace the 4 letters on my palm, placing a kiss after each one, my arched wrist bare and inked, neither shrine nor scar. And then, you know, because I love hybrid work and I'm a fan of Jenny Bully's on the EO genre sheet. I wrote this poem as a response to this particular essay. So poem as a response to Jenny Bully's on the EO genre sheet. From the way I sleep one language skin to inhabit the next, live between places, Dallas and Rârnicu Vâlcea, see my kids every month and a half during the academic year, then spoil them rotten a whole summer. Our mom is just different, my son explains to suspicious critical eyes. The way I cocktail poetry and nonfiction, how every Uber ride begins with "Donde estás, Clara?" How my students smile when I mention my nasal voice and thick accent. Self-deprecation always lightens their mood. How I may look like an essay, but I'm a flight feather juihitsu, a rough prose poem, always spilling edges, bending form. How in a world punctuated by otherness, we'd better be enough for ourselves, yet we are not, folding at the feet of the wrong gods. Do I still have time for more? Okay. So as I said, these are part of my upcoming collection, finger crossed, and then it's also the creative dissertation with which I plan to end with a bang this program. I have this erasure poem, but I think I'm gonna skip because I don't know how to visually enact the erasure that I performed. I can share it later. There is the next one is also a sort of like a piece of fragmented writing that is also numbered, but this one is called Ghost Mother of Unwatered Plants, and it is it was inspired. I was inspired by airplanes, right? I had no idea how amazing they are. Like, you know, they seem random and plain, and then, like, you know, some people like them, others are freaked out by them. So I sort of like looked at the metaphor of them, and I came up with this writing. It's called Ghost Mother of Unwatered Plants. Wall-hanging plant pot my friend Andrea mails from Sacramento to New York as a gift on my birthday. Look, their tentacles point to a 4 and a 5, she jokes. An epiphyte, which narrates upon a plant, describing an organism that does not need to place roots in the ground to survive, but sets them on the surface of other plants. An air plant. Mama, put me in your pocket when you leave. Childhood is a world of small distinctions. Little boy overalls have versatile pockets that house beads, dragonfly wings, lucky pebbles. All snippets of love. The brown suitcase on the bed stares at me, a foreign mouth feeding on the bare necessities. I wonder where love fits in. Airplanes have a minimal root system. They are easily adaptable and do not require frequent watering. Just allow the plant to completely dry up before watering anew. The pocket heart little boy brings back from kindergarten, a piece of yellow felt stuffed with love. Give it a squeeze and remember that mommy is not far away. His eyes are teary, my heart sings. Outside the window, a hooded eye, mid-October evening. So that was the other one that I had in mind. And because I work, I didn't, you know, how you're like always limited in as a rule, in the biography you submit by a number of words. I would like to also add to mine, but I never seem to find the right framing. The fact that I am proud to be working for like a long time, almost 15 years as an editor and also a translator. So I feel that they all go hand in hand, and then Barton understands how this is a labor of love and we cannot grow unless we help others grow. And if you don't mind, I would like to read, so my first poetry collection is upcoming also with Dos Madres Press next year. It's a poetry collection by a well-known Romanian poet, Ștefan Mănăsea. And if you don't mind, I would like to read a poem from his collection, one that I translated into English. It's called Postcard with Fall Crows. Yesterday on Napoca Street in the Cluj you never seem to arrive at, I wrote you a haiku, but I forgot to ask for pen and paper at the terrace downtown, so it kind of slipped my mind. The idea was this. At night, confetti falling black on the city, small flying dinos. I slow down. Students, families with children, all ladies and gentlemen slow down also, careful not to have the hyperacid droppings stain their clothes. Somehow vexed, although these crowds I was telling you about, they take care almost humanely of their grandchildren. This crowd that solve half of the city hall's sanitation issues. They should be rewarded, you know. The recycled cardboard city administrators should build them a memorial instead of the tasteless mausoleums. Some people don't understand, Irina, how someone can eat pork if pigs are so good at algebra. I, for one, cannot fathom the English aristocrat's passion for baby crow pie. Crows know how to break nuts, to look into trash cans, and to sit in fall or spring on the stirred-up anthill. I climbed the crimson-colored hill, shaken by the beauty that has resurrected butterflies and scented crocuses. I read Hrabal, and every now and then I came back to the Little Morning episode like a beaten, sad dog. I would join the Trojan War rather than bear a domestic fight. Such an injustice, I thought to myself. And Hrabal calmed me down, made me cry for something else, like Portuguese cats and African children. The sun set from behind the hill. I closed the book. I suddenly felt this unbearable door, so I called you. I wanted to scold you, but my voice turned into honey and my heart into an ocean. So I love how this poem is at the same time, you know, successfully to my mind blends the narrative and the visual. And then you have all these references that belong to a place in, you know, Western, to a Western city in Transylvania. And then, I don't know if you mentioned, but there is this unbearable door. Door is like duende. It's actually an untranslatable word. And it's supposed to be rendering this idea of missing someone, but you have this word, like, you know, in English we don't have a noun for it. Like we can say missing, but it also resonates. No, it also resembles the third person singular form of the verb to be in pain. So there is this, like, you know, how missing pains me, but then it's also fills me with other emotions. So these are, I find it to be, and much as I love to translate, I find that some words have to be left in the target language the way they are in the original one, because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I love this idea that my readers are smart. I want them to be active readers, to do the work and be like, what is this word? And, like, you know, let me do a little bit of research and, you know, sort of like enjoy the experience at a different level, rather than have, you know, I never insert footnotes. I don't want them to be, you know, to become lazy. And I want to surprise them and vex them and have them be anything but lazy. So, door is one of my favorite words, and I try to keep it every time, not only in my own poetry, but in the poems that I write. And I also have do I have time for one more poem? Okay, so this one is actually called Doors. To segue into this one, is called Door, and it's about, like, what I miss when I'm away from home. Late afternoon light seeping through the shutters, and the day seems impossibly long. There is something crystalline about tomorrow, the way I will be waiting for the bus, as if for a miracle that brings me closer to the end of the week. Friday is this well-bred animal that promises to feast the eyes with its composed footfall. Meanwhile, the poem does not want to be a poem anymore. It does not trust language any longer. Shush, I say, you belong to the world. Later, I whisper as I lay my hand on the chest, your heart feels like an immigrant. unbelonging and tired. When it breathes, nothing comes out. And I need to redeem this rest of the week where grief lives in a new life every day, and I must be present. Yeah, that happens when I'm not convinced that the word I'm doing justice to the poem. I sort of like imagine that the poem is unsatisfied and bring the poem into the consideration in conversation within the content of the poem itself. And yeah, and then I go back and I wonder, like, is this the wish of the poem? Anyway, how are we on time? I'm very mindful because I've never had, I was never given such a generous amount of time, and I don't want to be boring anyone or like, stepping on Kristyn's slot. So can I read another? Okay. Okay, I guess I'm a fast reader. Okay. This one is called Aperture, right? And it's like how this space is open, like they crack when least expected, and then they allow you to take a quick look. So Aperture. The world as something wild, the sawing of its breath pinching the skin, sun assailing every surface, tree lash scratching the view, balls of light peeling skin off like lychees. That invincible summer and we weightless, the ripe plumpness of love, mouth and hands, eyes, cells standing agape. It kept us there inside where we always wanted to where we always wanted to stay. Now we need to make things out of scars. And then I should totally end on something that is less dramatic and would make people cringe. It's like, oh, this person is like, okay. This one is called Cabin Memory in the Alaskan Woods, and it's a love poem. You and I are the gods of white, impervious to light and decay. Each dawn, we horseshoe metaphors before we have them run our veins, a pair of Rita and Rex German shepherds, chewing on boar bones, ready to teeth the world should the world chain us to a fence, a thought, a line. At noon, we wolf for each other, nibbling at hues of pink and purple, a sundog on each shoulder, the purr of snow caressing our tongues, one heart muscle. Before the moth-winged night bursts 1,000 stars, fleshed out poems descend into the room, crashing through living tissues, words meeting the air, an electric sizzle of grit and surrender alike. And I should end with a bang, right? I did my MFA in New York, and I had family upstate, and obviously they invited me over on several occasions, and one time they took me to Niagara Falls, and it was this lousy weather, so we'd stay there in the drizzle and like watch the splendor of the place. But then it was like, the day was still it was still kind of like late morning, noon, and then we decided to go to the aquarium of Niagara. So this inspired me a poem, and it's called While Watching Baby Stingrays at the Aquarium of Niagara. I have a homeless soul. I wanted to be a nomad, but charting and retracing footsteps require some kind of commitment, a sort of joyful repetition. A rover seems to have the tough skin of a hard man around the vowels. The hem of the sky belongs to the daring, I tell myself every time I board the 2:30 a.m. flight to New York. I make leaving my 2 kids behind the pinnacle of the trip, at least in the polite eyes of my elderly window neighbor. To mother is to smother at times. To morning your way through the circling Niagara aquarium before the day becomes a rooftop in summer. I watch baby stingrays flutter behind the wall, the glass womb, all pink and loosened, tiny aliens stuck in ravioli dough. My son, the overly tall 12-year-old with a knack for scientific drawing, would pencil the round mouth into a bleeding flower. His sister, her persiflage and green gaze, whispering how there should be a museum of this kind of weirdness. They'd bicker and banter with one another, dragging feet across the blue tiles. And no, this is not a love letter. These kids who button and unbutton my days are an ocean and two seas behind. It is I and the poems who took the daily train from Penn Station to Niagara Falls, trekking for 9 hours to roam and read, to shed and stand firm. Today, being a poet is a dangerous job, flashes the Guardian title, and though I'm neither flogged, imprisoned, or worse, I too carry the sweet burden of poetry. In the worn-out cabin bag, the jet lag pours, the underside of well-written notes I'm about to share with curious students who shall kindly mispronounce my name before they pin my thick accent to an imaginary map. An ocean and two seas back, past Danube, slightly east, down a mountain row, among natural springs, green woods, zoom in. There, second floor, two teenage stingrays softly breathing into the wee hours, no worries whatsoever. Of course, I read this to the kids and they were like appalled. They were like, you could have, they said like, you could have actually picked something that was more exciting than the baby stingrays, but it's like, and I was like, yep, you can never please them no matter what. As I think that one thing that binds the work that I do as an editor, poet, and translator is my love for language or languages. And I love to translate. I think that that would be my solution for whatever means writer's block. Like when I feel uninspired, I translate other people's work, and somehow I managed to kind of like open up to or delve into the mystery that language is. And I do that. Like I start my morning translated from English and French into Romanian or the other way around. So I obviously end up writing poems about language. So this one is a sonnet and it's called Language First and Last. From mouth to nib, a row of urgent pleasures, unsealed from flesh and blood, throbbing with hope. The way I bore children between my legs, painful bliss that dried me up and then spat me into aliveness. Such hurry chokes the line a killjoy. Let them sweet things spread limbs, their string, lights bulb, flickering tongues brush our bodies, our dwellings. May you rest on the crook of their syllabled arms, quarreling secrets only the two of us know. It is the metaphors that spell us out, their urgency and softness, and I bare my skin to their white tiled touch, a stitch of red moon, the tilted sky. It's always a nightingale or two you chase with your ears, skins of dreams curl into commas, and the body brimming with breath, this fire starving and never appeased, and the sonnet craning its neck to be ruined by billowing waters. Yep. So good for another one. I sound like a broken record. How are we on time? Good? Okay. So let me see. I'll try to find the one that is also sort of like not depressing or so yeah, the hardest thing is obviously when I come back, and it's not only the sort of like the jet lag and the age and kind of like taking longer to get back into shape, but it's like the sadness that you bring, because you're like, that's when I feel the most out of place, because I'm fresh from home and then I'm still back here to a place that I call home, which is basically not my home. So sometimes I produce writing on those days. And this one is called Algorithm with Broken Search. And my university is in one of the satellite towns in between Fort Worth and Dallas, and it's called Richardson. That's where UT Dallas is. Algorithm with Broken Search. The vibrating muscle of a Richardson day. First, in the early oat milk single shot venti, Later in the conversational code switching. Haide, vino să bem another coffee împreună. It is the little things that wipe away the stupor, the jellyfish singing of door in every aching cell, more coffee suits, a Muru Muru butter burgundy for only $2.35 on sale, living on discount joy in the marshal's heaven, measuring unfamiliar faces, always smiling, never catching a glimpse of the bird in the throat, sewing butterflies with a clenched mouth while correcting rhetorical papers for 19 students. At night, a splinter of moon, eyes chasing shadows in the small room, a frijoles scent sweeping under the door. Yep, not that I'm hungry, but I'm always like, yes, frijoles, it's okay. I'll eat it and then put it in my poems. And believe it or not, like we don't have the black ones in Romania. And when, you know, usually my luggage is filled with gifts for the kids. And then my husband finds that at the very back of it, the back of like, and he goes, what in God's names, in God's name are these? I was like, beans. He was like, you brought beans? You pay to bring back home beans? We have beans here. I was like, no, you don't understand. These are frijoles. They're like, no. I have a sad one, and then I have a non-sad one. Should I go for the sad one? Do I have time for both? So, okay. So that's me. I wrote this poem right before I was like, I was teaching. I thought I was teaching to at the time to this private school, to this kindergarten class, and then I got some bad news heard on the phone. So that was like me trying to revisit the moment. It's called Prologue. You text me you're dying one Thursday afternoon in the middle of my phonics class, and I see sounds melt away, slowly trickle down the floor, a jolly puddle. 10 kids watch my lips go white, a folded hummingbird throbbing inside the throat. All of a sudden, I am a giant spider crawling into the west corner of the tall room, above ABC posters and measuring charts, a thick, choky web spurting out of eyes, mouth, hands. A pair of sticky fingers feel at my left hand. Miss Clara, your nose is bleeding. My upper lip is moist, my tongue tastes metal. For the first time in months post-COVID, I can actually feel a salty, subtle flavor, and I smile. I won't wipe it, this Irish reminder of being alive, back to my senses, though my heart, limp fish, is choking with sorrow, yet you won't let me walk this, rather snowslide into acceptance. What remains, remains, you say, as if love can be burnt off and the bitter ashes won't clog your breath. So I'm here licking at this shallow wound, a nosebleed, and before I know it, I am lost in the squall of you, and we'll have poems grow out of my chest like mushrooms during dew hours, and you will know the sound a woman makes when birthing. And obviously I have to find I have to go with a happy one so that you want. So this one is, I'll end with another person, another poet that I'm translating, and this one is a poem written by, it's a love poem from the poet to his fiancée, and there are in this beautiful Greek sunset, and obviously there's something about Greece, the Aegean Sea, sand, everything that inspires everyone to write poems. So I translated it into English, and I didn't ask, maybe like, if you all were interested in hearing Romanian, so I could have like read the original poem and then the translation. I don't know. Would anyone be interested? I know one person here who speaks Romanian. So I'll start with the original poem. It's Ciprian Măceșaru, Vino să vezi. Vino să vezi cum lumina cade ușor, cum se strecoară printre noi ca un animăluț auriu. Vino să vezi cum pereții și cerul, patul și iarba, masa și arborii vor să răluci cum numai emoția fără lacăt, fără traseu, fără orgoliu o poate face. Vino să vezi cum ne putem rezolva ambuteiajele interioare, cum ne putem debloca, cum ne putem elibera din carcasa pe care am învățat să o purtăm ca pe o uniformă militară. Vino să vezi cum simplitatea va limpezi lumea, arătându-ne frumusețea atât de bine ascunsă în lucrurile evidente. Vino să vezi toate astea, oricât de departe ți se pare că ești, oricât de târziu s-a făcut. Vom avea de partea noastră liniștea unei seri, într-un golf din care bărcuțe de pescar se îndepărtează lent, melancolic și nu ne va fi frig și nu ne va păsa de nimic. Viața va avea sunetul valurilor spălând stâncile roșii și nu o să mai fim obosiți și undeva în viața de altă dată dintre noi vor rămâne două grămezi de moloz ca două morminte proaspete ale unor roboți. So this was the Romanian version. This is what Romanian sounds like. Although it's a Latin language, it bears the influence of the Slavic invaders and the Turkish invaders. So some sounds like the ts and sh, you won't find them in the Spanish, Portuguese, French, or Italian. So this is, and here comes the translation. Come see how the light is slowly falling, how it slips through us like a golden little animal. Come see how the walls and the sky, the bed and the grass, the table and the trees which sparkle like only emotion, unlocked, uncharted, unselfish can do. Come see how we can solve our inner traffic jams, how we can unblock, how we can set ourselves free of the carcass we learn to wear like a military uniform. Come see how simplicity will clear up the world, showing us the beauty so carefully hidden inside the obvious things. Come see all of these, no matter how far you think you are, no matter how late it's getting. We will have on our side the quiet of an evening in a gulf from where little fishing boats are slowly moving melancholically, and we won't be cold, and we won't care about anything. Life will have the sound of the waves crashing against the red rocks, and we will no longer be tired. Somewhere in the old days, 2 piles of rubble will be left of us, like 2 fresh graves of some robots. Ciprian Măceșaru, another Romanian poet. So I hope that was refreshing to a certain extent to, get a sense of where, my code switching comes from. How are we on time? We're good? Can I keep going?
Yeah, I mean, however long you.
Oh no, I'm like, I can be done. Like, obviously, as Kristyn probably knows, and like we have a bunch of poems, and I could go and on. But I think that I want to sort of like, take over and
okay,
kill our audience before she gets a chance to read. So I'll stop here. Thank you for listening.
No problem. Sorry, I was clicking too much. Thank you so much, Clara. That was lovely. Thank you for navigating, language, motherhood, creation, all automatic absences, and for holding sacred the untranslatable. With that, I'll go ahead and introduce our next reader, Kristyn Garza. Kristyn Garza is a Chicana from the U.S.-Mexico border, moved from her hometown of McAllen, Texas, to Austin to earn her bachelor's degree in English literature at St. Edward's University, later earning her MFA in poetry from the University of Notre Dame. She was longlisted for Palette Poetry's 2022 Sappho Prize, and her work has been published or is forthcoming in AGNI, Poets.org, Tupelo Quarterly, Cream City Review, the McNeese Review, RHINO, Pembroke Magazine, and others. Most recently, she was awarded the 2023 Academy of American Poets Billy Maich Award. Her chapbook, Dictionary of Bodies, won Gasher Press 2024 Spring Poetry Chapbook Prize and is forthcoming in winter of 2024. Kristyn currently resides in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she is in her second year of her PhD in poetry at the University of Cincinnati. I came to Kristyn's work through Instagram, and I thought the title Dictionaries of Bodies sounded cool, so I sought her work out. What I like about Kristyn's work is how it finds an equanimity in burial and excavation, doesn't swap bodies so much as switch what they touch and place on their tongue. And with that, I'll give Kristyn the spotlight, and excited for you to hear them read.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So many nice things. Thank you. Um, thanks for the invite. I'm happy to be reading here. Thank you, Clara, for reading. I enjoyed every single moment of it. We have very similar interests, so that's exciting for me. I have about 11 poems or so, some of which are from dictionary bodies, some are from a project I wrote over summer, and some I'm currently working on this semester. So that's fun. I love being 25 and saying like this semester, like I'm 12. That's fun. Being in school is fun. Okay, so dictionary bodies is my upcoming chapbook. It is an exploration of translation, but sort of thinking about the ways in which we can challenge translation and challenge direct translatability. So it's sort of an exploration of what I like to call affective translation. It's essentially taking 30 Japanese phrases or words that struggle to find a place in the inadequacy of what English language is, and sort of taking those impossibilities and making it possible to understand through emotion and image and sound mostly. So you'll get mostly like a scene from a movie, a watercolor painting, that sort of effect rather than grounded in narrative. And then in the other poems, we'll get more into narrative. But there we go. I will not be translating the titles. I just don't believe in doing that. If you're interested in learning what any of these Japanese words are, feel free to Google. Google is a wonderful tool. Okay. How's my sound? We're good? Okay, cool. Wasuremono. The shadow people watch from their spot in the corner, an accumulation of failed vocalizations, body as bullet trains speeding toward edges of seat cushions, pinned, pricked with a sudden realization, the chest is cavity, the womb is cavern, the mouth is sinkhole, breath frictions its way through the hollow holes of the body, an itch, a brain curdle, a charcoal smudge leached onto limp fingertips, grasping at vinyl grooves, crackles kinetically fractalized, shashinga boketa, I, a wraith in my own body, a fossil imprinted, eroded. So that's sort of the vibe of what they are. Formally, they're 10 lines each, every single one of them. I like to call them my tiny bodies. They're very small, and it sort of borrows from the traditional haiku. Obviously, a haiku is 3 lines, but the idea of brevity and compactness and pressure and what that sort of does to language. It sort of sharpens language to a fine point. So that's sort of what we're going for here. Nikutai. Rusted train car is made of cartilage. When passengers disguise themselves inside her, they can feel her trainness, that distinct metallic clang ringing out. Watashi wa kara desu yo. Dilapidated copper tongues swell uniformly, clumps examine jawbones, the passengers licking at rusted fingernails, teasing gum lines, sobbing, they bow. Baskets distort gravel that inhabits rusted train cars' epidermis. Passengers think written disasters destroy porridge tracks. They do not know what sloshes beneath the shore. Mottainai. Dawn is squandered on ruined skyscrapers, flowered alleys triggered by pollinated lumps of meat. The girls that ride the last train bring themselves to smile, perforating into parades, litters of today's headlines only to be pellucid and lonely. A deprived gaggle of fire pots committing suicide before gutter rats have a chance to flit their whiskers, gutting their songs, keeping shuddering throats from branching alarm clocks. Distilling closed eyes, filtered mysteries become bullet trains that never stop, where nothing happens. Ona no ko wa zuki o sori suteru. Vacated stations are no place to receive caressing pleasantries. Rehearsals are unworthy. Naru. Your smile begins in your eyes. Tides rise, stay embedded within hickory constellations before crinkles shave themselves, carve, pearled dimples, vocal folds, feathered, and escaping flight, contractions, pressurized into diamonds, amber and sweet. I've grown bloated lapping up your sugared rings. Kimi wa watashi no subete da. My insomniatic leader, dependent vocalization, desiring a glimpse of your syrup upturned, a single word, a stagnant moment in which you know I am bodied, but you carry the weight of stigmata on your back, knowing I will never be one of them. Still, I return. Otsukaresama deshita. Musicians divide themselves in two, mitosis. One mute, one wholly tracheatic, a swarm of bodies emanating from cavernous womb, vocality found within movement of the train conductors, pooling of teeth, roots, bloody jars collecting past efforts, omiyage exchanged passage into your rib cage, my body with their bodies, huddled together within your orifice, an inflorescence, weighted palm pressed to back, warmth seeps, flocks make home an assembly of bones, together we chime. And those are just a glimpse of Dictionary of Bodies, in which there are 30 of them, coming out November 15th. Pre-orders are open on Gasher Press. All the beautiful things. The next 5 are from this project I was working on over summer, which I'm very mad about working on, but not mad about working on. My mentor tells me I'm crazy. I was not supposed to be working on a new project. I was supposed to be finishing an old project, and I didn't do that. I got distracted and possessed, and I ended up working on something different. It is entitled Brittle Still Beating. It is an exploration, not necessarily of translation, although I'm always very interested in translation, but like larger than language to language, word to word, how do we translate ourselves to other people is very interesting. I'm an autistic poet. I don't understand people very well. So it's an obsession of mine to figure out how we can foster community, how we can craft communication, tethering, understanding. And a lot of that stems from growing up on the border, from being bullied my entire life for looking very translucent while also being Mexican American. So, you know, lots of things like that, be it speaking Spanish, English. I learned Japanese in college. There's a lot of in-betweenness that I tend to struggle with a bit. So yeah, that's sort of ruminations around what's going on here. Still in the vein of understanding each other as human beings and thinking about different ways in which we can foster connectivity. Invasive species for my abuelito Noe. Side by side we sit, my breath exhales where yours begins, grafting my scion into your rootstock. Our veins are embroidery on our hardy folials of migration and simultaneous rootedness. We run away from connectivity. Still, you breathe into me, your exhale, my inhale. Cellular respiration, mutualism, an etched in stone relationship older than history. A tongueless gringa Latina and an abuelito blessed with talents apart from a gift and understanding. We are plants in a way. We are foliage tangled upon one another, trapped and raptured by each other, with one native, the other invasive. Voices can't seem to tell which is which. Voices wish to burn down even deserts if it means not having to pick. We breathe as one, as a forest sighs and makes greened hills fall and rise. I propagate myself close to you, making myself small. I burrow myself into you, desperate My symbiotic roots wish to ground themselves as you do. We are a wound left unattended to, an incomplete transfusion, my neurons failing at firing to you. I open my mouth and silence pours out, a warbling, monstrous thing that does not know how to relate to you how enormously I adore you. But Abuelito, it is my desire that our silences shared, our brush of hands, our bristled kisses, somehow communicate to you that when my mouth manages to mutilate muffled, te quiero muchos, I mean to say a million thank yous for loving me, a sapling who never quite bloomed in a way that resembled anything like you. Next is Creation Myth, Easter Egg. Most of these are in prose blocks. Please don't ask me why, I have no idea. It just happened that way. And I'm a sucker for a prose block. Creation Myth, Easter Egg. It is April, and we are gathered in your backyard to hunt down elusive eggs. We children are dangerous on such days. We carry psychedelic baskets, stalking our prey. It is a war zone. My cousin desires a red egg I'd coaxed into my hand. I am far too tender for brutality. I give him what he thinks is his. He sets his sights on you sitting quietly on the porch. Quiet creatures in times of war are the most conspicuous, very often the loudest due to their contrary kindness. I cover him while he makes his move. He shoots his confetti bullet right into you. I watch as blood weeps from your fresh head wound. In his greenness, he is celebrating. I too wish to integrate myself, forge a path for some kind of belonging. Taking an egg from my arsenal, I make my way to stand by you. But I can't seem to bring myself to break you. My imminent explosion hovering over your head, all I can see is your face bracing for impact, and that face, I am reminded of an old photo you showed me of you in a swimsuit on a beach in Hawaii, where you and Grandpa had gotten married. The pressure of the confetti awaiting a kindling held tight in my hands feels too much like a bomb, the same kind that detonated next to Grandpa when he was drafted to fight in Vietnam. And I imagine that his face that you're making is close to the one you made when you spent your days writing letters and recording tapes to send to him when he was away. A grimace, your brows furrowed in resolution, as if girded for whatever cruelty returned to you on your doorstep, or as bound ash mixed with bits of bone. I place my hand on your top of your head where the blood has already soaked in, and I swallow the moment in which my touch makes you flinch. With my other hand, I break my egg inside myself and make it hail rainbows all around you in place of bullets. In Search of a Banderia in Ohio, shouts out to Felicia Zamora, my mentor, who is, this is a story of a conversation with us, and Danny Charles, who is also here in the Zoom, I'm pretty sure. Hello, friend. I love you, friend. Thank you for being here. This is a conversation of the three of us. In Search of a Banderia in Ohio. For those of you who don't know, a banderia is basically like Mexican sweetbread. It begins with a hankering for conchas, empanadas de calabaza y marranitos. It begins with a hunger for connectivity. My mentor in Cincinnati jokes that with herself, my cohort friend, and me, we make up the Latina population for the entire city. And this is funny. And this somehow hurts. The comedy, I mean. It's comical how alienating a wild goose chase for pan dulce and authenticity can make one feel. This internal radio signaling toward home, or conceptions of home, a direction that points toward a rivering. This circling around city concrete is a contained kind of pacing. I feel myself a caged beast. My blood fears this confinement. It's restless inside me. I feel a slow process of severing, distance separating me from my family. I am infantile in my searching for anything to reunite me with familiarity. This isolation borders on drowning. It was a great conversation, by the way. That sounds super depressing, but it was a great conversation. A chronic haunting. Grief is a beautiful vehicle for memory, but haunting hurts more than any known thing. It's a constant hollowing of the body, a nagging ear ringing that drives forth insanity. I find myself circling like a desert buzzard, desperate to stop the world, if only for a moment. To stop this gutting. Aching growls deeply like a rabid beast inside me, snarling a grated teething. I often dream that when I die, I'll return to your side. Myself, a small fluttering buried into you. Us fragile animals nestled together on hills of comforters and dim lighting, watching VHS, Oliver and Company. Eyes glued to your old box TV, hands fearful of parting. It's the parting that tills space for hauntings. Mom still cries for my brother, his tousled dark hair that looks too much like daddy's only, seen in clairvoyant dreams symptomatic of pregnancy. When grief is miscarried in the body, there's a separation there at the point of aching. It misplaces itself and thus sprouts forth hauntedness, masticating the heart, grinding itself into gnashed particles that stick to acid-scorched stomach lining. We are plagued by perpetual upset tummies. At once I am stunted beneath popcorn hospital ceilings, and you are dying. It seemed that you were always dying. 9 visits to infirmaries before your passing. I thought I'd had plenty of practice in this art of fearing. Grandma still talks about the day you looked into her eyes and drifted. The women in our family have a great capacity for haunting. Correcting myself, of course, I mean to say that we have a great capacity for inhabiting hauntings. The women in our family are all wailing, and it is a miracle our parting memories don't desiccate us, tearing at the paper frailty of our tetherings. Creation myth seashell. You can find me peeking, divorced and sand-duned, between tiny curious feet tripping over themselves, instincts keeping weight from crushing me, a protective impulsivity like a parental turning of bodies, cradling some fragility, this drive to shelter vulnerability, disguising fissured surfaces, pucked with belittlement, a social impurity. Beneath silent sand lies preservation for this innocent, brittle beauty. Those are my 5 from Brittle Still Beating. Super fun. I'm sorry for depressing everybody. It does not get better because my final poem is from a new project that is just depressing in nature. But in a fun way, I think. I don't know. I think it's fun to point at things and to talk about them. I think it's fun for me. My dog has joined us and he's looking at me like, why aren't you feeding me? Fun. So if you hear anything, that's him. This new project that I'm working on, super excited for, is called Choosing the Bear. Those who are not chronically on social media, I envy you, but if you have been on social media and you've seen hashtag #ManOrBear, there are people walking around the world asking women on the street, if you were alone in a forest, would you choose to be alone with a man or a bear? No context given. That's the whole question. And so many women and femme-bodied individuals are choosing bear. And I think that's very telling about where our gender equality, where our safety and our violence capacities and all the things are currently. And so I decided I would start writing a new project explaining, because I'm a person that likes to read comments when I scroll through social media, and so many of those comments are from men who don't seem to understand, whether willfully, maliciously, on purpose, or they truly just don't understand. So this is sort of a project explaining the mentality and providing examples and showing your work and doing all the things to make it super easy for people to understand where this is coming from and where this could possibly be going. So this is a poem entitled Echo, based off of the Echo and Narcissus Greek myth. Super short rundown of that. There was a nymph in the forest named Echo. She got cursed by the gods to only speak through repeating the ends of other people's words or phrases. She comes upon Narcissus, a man in the forest, tries to shoot her shot, says, I love you. He brutally rebuttals her. She withers away into a flower, and he gets cursed into staring at himself for eternity into his reflection in a pool of water. Super basic rundown of the myth. So this is Echo after Diana Quainon's Again. A woman attends a small university for literature. Her father finds her dreams of archaeology, of excavating the written psyche, a kind of comedy. She meets a man in her first workshop. He asks her on a date. He tells her she is, to him, a goddess. She wants to say yes, but her mouth opens to shape an ow. Her sudden exclamation of pain, of course, meaning no. Her father calls to tell her about her cousin becoming a doctor, her cousin who is becoming a real doctor. She is tempted to text the man from her workshop that night. She wants to drown out her father's pride in his nephew. She wants to overwhelm her senses to forget her father's laughter at her joy for digging up what history likes to keep buried. She does not text the man. She can't. She withers overnight, leaving behind only her shadow. Echo. She stays home after graduating high school. She fell in love with a drug addict's shadow. She sees the kindness in his eyes. Her local college is good enough. She stays in her father's home. Her father remarries. She is no longer an only child, haunted by the ghosts of her miscarried siblings. She is awkward. She feels alien in her own home. Her boyfriend says he has space for her. She spends more and more time making his house a home. Their love leads to love making. She grows more attached and chooses to ignore the glass in his eyes. He promises to treat himself better. His promises to treat himself better go unfulfilled. She forgives. Not all promises are kept. Her father's new wedding band taught her this. She finds herself pregnant. Her lover decides to marry her. They marry and she drops out of college and they both pick up more shifts. She is preparing for motherhood. He is staying out later at night. She is getting bigger. Bodies grow when full of hope. She is called to come and talk him down from a roof. She loses direction trying to find which roof. There have been so many up to now. She arrives in time to see the glass in his eyes harden. He can't see her. He thinks he can fly. She loses hope, and just like that, the body adapts. She reads his letter and finds that he'd filled 3 other women's bodies with hope. Curling in on herself, she sinks into her couch and doesn't come out. Her voice trails off, echo. She adapts to her new career. She spent 4 years, then 2, then 4, trading what some would promise is youth for her dreams. She calls her father on her way to work. He does not answer. It's been a week since he last attempted a connection. In her increased age, she's discovered herself as the smallest of priorities, dangling precariously from lists of most important things. She is oriented. Her colleagues are all fans of people she's worked with. They love the school she did her master's with. They love the act of speaking big names. It makes them feel prestigious. She is hosted at a welcome to the department party. It is at a bar because everything takes place in bars. Every beginning and every end has existed in a bar. Every academic finds an excuse to drown egos in the absence of a life and alcohol. Her instincts tell her to light that shit on fire. Bear witness to how long it all burns, how many bodies could be warmed by it. Her colleagues toast her. They ask her more questions about her school, its name again, about the gods she's worked with, their names again. They ask her about her age, because she traded that coveted fountain for digging at roots she's found rot hidden within. She steps outside. Everyone needs air at some point. At some point, we all have to come up for it and admit that we've been drowning for ages. Her senior colleague joins her. He is a smoker. He is much older. She makes small talk. She trained for this too, maybe as much as she trained for her actual job. He takes her small talk as something inviting. She is on her back in the bar's alley. She is petrified as he stares at himself in the mirror of her dilated eyes. When he's done, he hides himself before returning to the voices reverberating inside. She feels her body shriveling into cracks in the concrete beneath her. Her legs ache. Everything aches. She never knew how much wind could howl from between her when hollowed out. Echo. She never went to school. She lives where the minds of girls are feared, policed to the point of outlawing something as natural as education. Ideas and knowledge are powerful keys for hope. She lives caged like a small, fluttering being aching for an updraft wind. She lives where people playing gods curse women's voices, so she can't speak for herself. She instead has to force her tongue to mimic the ends of others' speech, the freedom of it, so she chooses to close her mouth for now, better than being forced into a torturous ventriloquy. She wanders aimlessly, following only paw prints or scrape marks left on peeled trees. She comes upon a solitary man, and the ancestry inside her tears at her to run. But she finds the fur on his face familiar. She sees his dark curls wet from sipping spring water as reminiscent of a trusted friend who often leaves padded trails and who traces blackberries underfoot. She is both terrified and hopeful. He calls out to the air, "Who's here? Here." She covers her mouth with her hands, skin to skin, praying that her father will not suffer for too long after her murder for speaking. He calls out again, "Will you come show yourself to me?" Me. She chooses hope. She stands before him who is stranger and who reminds her of her once friend. "What would you like?" Like. She places one hand on her heart, her other on his. She smiles. She hopes and hopes and hopes. He does not like the look of hope held tender in the eye. He slaps her hand away in disgust. "You are not worthy. You are nothing. You are not me. I will kill you for your mistake in speaking me. She ran from him. Friends don't threaten to kill you for simply existing. Alone once again, she finds her true friend's tracks, follows behind like a toddling thing, freshly learning to wean off of crawling. She bides her time. She is patient and knows from history that silence is very often accompanied by lush cacophony. Silence will not kill her. And meanwhile, he is off, lost somewhere, withering away as he stares himself down, never able to wrap his arms around the reflection of himself that shows him something kinder than what he is. It is difficult to warm oneself with that which does not exist. Thank you. I didn't mean to leave everybody in a super depressing place. That is where we are.
Oh, thank you, Kristyn. That was a lovely reading, and I think I mean, depressing is of course, but I think that I think where hope lives in those places where the addressment occurs of things that people don't usually give a location to. So um, uh, I find that to be a hopeful um, uh, endeavor. And anyway, thank you for those inhabitings, hauntings, and for leaving language alone, but not abandoning it and respecting us to find it ourselves. Lovely reading. Thank you, both featured readers, for reading today. I had a couple people for the open mic, but they didn't show up. So I'm going to go ahead and just read one poem, and then let everyone get out of here today. I'm going to read a poem from Emily Menzel's collection. It's actually one long poem, but it's called "The Girl Who Became a Rabbit." I'm just going to read one section from it. It says, "The real question is this: when you die, will you have written all the rabbit fables you intended? You must think ambitiously and hope for many rabbit fables. In giving yourself many rabbits, you gift yourself a kindness. Do not worry about how to justify the fables. Do not worry about how to justify playfulness. Consider an array of rabbits, a rabbit as observed through a window, a rabbit as a stone, a rabbit formed for a child, the child formed for a rabbit. And with that, thanks everyone for being here. I'll send out the YouTube video once it's up on the channel to the readers. And yep, love y'all and hope y'all have a great rest of the weekend.